I got my direction and it's all mine.
I know how you feel. I understand it.
So what if I do? What if I don't follow your line?
You want to go prove something, and that's the way we like it. You got it better than us. Repeat your ass off. Wait for your brother next to you. When you want respect and you want to earn respect, you strike them, and you strike them, and you strike them. That's how you get respect.
When you woke up on Saturday morning, there were only 6 teams in the country that had better than 40-1 odds to win the national championship. By Saturday night, that number was down to 3. So the question is, with 3 big losses in the top, what would it mean for the college football playoff? The committee has spoken. We will now react to it. It's Rankings Reaction presented by Cheez-It. AJ McCarron, Christine Williamson. I'm Jason Fitz. We're here with you live for the next hour on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, all the places that you usually hang out with us. Every week, we react and we eat Cheez-Its. We got the best job in the entire world. And tonight, we are going to speak to the committee chair in just a few minutes. So we will ask the questions that non-professionals ask. Because let's face it, Reese wearing the tie, he's got to do the thing. We can have a little fun with Boo. Boo's going to join us. But, guys, the committee has spoken. I don't think there's any shock, especially after the way Saturday went down. Georgia is the #1 team in all the land.
Nobody's surprised by that. I do want to say, though, that was an amazing intro.
Thank you.
On Saturday morning when you woke up.
Thank you very much. You know what?
Really
I learned from watching you. Christine's looking at me. She's like, what the hell is he talking about?
That was good
I want to know what you're talking about. Nobody's shocked about Georgia. Last week you were all over Tennessee.
No.
And
okay, stop.
Oh, my God, Tennessee's the greatest ever.
The question, AJ, was, is anybody shocked after what happened on Saturday that Georgia is #1? So my answer
don't get on the Georgia train,
no.
Christine.
Oh, I'll get on the Georgia train. I'm a
off.
front runner all day long. My Raiders can't win a game. I'll take Georgia. All right, Georgia's the #1 team in all the land. Shocking. #2, Ohio State. We will have a little debate about that coming up. #3, Michigan. So Michigan goes up 2 spots, as you can see with the little green triangle there. TCU coming in at #4. They're also up 3 spots. Tennessee falls from 1 to 5 after getting shellacked by Georgia. Oregon goes up 2 to #6. #7 is LSU, who goes up 3 spots after beating Alabama. That is your top 7. And the fun part of this is we only show you 7 because there's more drama. Georgia's #1 in the country. I said there's no shock to it. I think they came out and asserted whatever the questions were, they answered them. Absolutely. Georgia sits not only at #1, but in incredible control of their own destiny at this point. They're as close to being a lock as you can possibly be.
Right. Unless they lose in the SEC championship, I feel like they're going to definitely be into the
I
college
think
football
even
playoff.
if they lose,
But it's interesting. What if they lose to an LSU team? This is a whole conversation. This is a whole conversation. If they lose to LSU.
Even if they lose, they're in.
If they lose to LSU.
Even if they lose, they're in.
Okay, but this is what you said last week also, because you were talking about Alabama. If Alabama is an SEC championship, blah, 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 or a champion. Everybody obviously was saying that they would be in, but
I did troll last week and say, what about a 2-loss SEC champion?
Right.
Never
but now
thinking
that could happen.
And now
that could happen.
We're sitting here with LSU sitting at #7. A 2-loss team's never made the college football playoff. It feels like there's been this stigma against it. But, man, now you got Georgia sitting here waiting. I mean, they're going to wait to take on likely LSU and representing the SEC West, we would think, barring some sort of upset along the way. And, you don't seem wildly impressed by LSU, but I thought they were impressive enough to do what they needed to do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I haven't said anything. Listen, playing in Death Valley is one of the, if not the toughest place in the country to play, especially a night game. So, listen, that game was going to be a toss-up, especially with the way Alabama's defense is playing right now. Mm-hmm. The thing that worries me about Alabama when we talk about that game is where is Will Anderson gone? Where are their Bama's edge rushers? They all of a sudden are nowhere to be found. Especially that game, they were going up against 2 freshman tackles. So Alabama's defense worries me. It's not their offense.
Well, you see Georgia here on the screen. They got Mississippi State coming. They got Kentucky coming. They got Georgia Tech coming. We just saw some highlights. I think Stetson Bennett, and we've talked a lot about this over the course of the year. Stetson Bennett came in with just a different level of confidence. It feels like that was there for Tennessee. Again, there was a real question about how that game was going to look, and Georgia was clearly the superior team. And by the way, Stetson Bennett was airing it out. I mean, absolutely just crushed them.
Listen, he needed to have that game. It had been a couple weeks since their passing game had been top-notch like they started out earlier in the year. But listen, I said it last week. Georgia was the #1 team in the country. I don't care if they lose in the SEC championship game to whoever it is, if it's LSU or if Bama finds a way to get back in, if LSU slips up, they're still going to be in. So I think Georgia's a guaranteed 100%
If there's
lock.
not a lot of controversy around Georgia, there's at least a meh for some of us around the #2 team in the country, which is Ohio State. Now, Ohio State comes off 2 straight games, and everybody's been at me every time I say this, but Northwestern, that was just not a good offensive performance. And I know the wind was there, but I'll also go back to this. Northwestern was 9 of 20 on third downs. Ohio State was 4 of 15. Like, if you don't have third down efficiency against Northwestern and they do against you, I don't think that's a good enough effort for the #2 team in the country. I've been disappointed by Ohio State's offense over the last couple weeks. I'm a little surprised that Michigan didn't get the bump above them, but I also think that'll take care of itself.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. We'll figure that out Thanksgiving weekend. I feel like the thing with rankings in general, especially when it comes to the CFP, it's hard to knock a team unless they lose and it's absolutely atrocious, which, like you mentioned, it wasn't great, but you have to really give somebody a reason to drop them down in the CFP ranking. So if you have a bad game, I feel like that's not enough to necessarily, unless you take a loss, I don't think it's enough to necessarily drop somebody out of the top 4 of the CFP.
They were winning 14-7 with 4 minutes left versus a 1-7 Northwestern team.
Also, okay, yes, but also when you think about it, what other teams, if you bump Michigan, Ohio State is still going to be in the top 4.
I understand that, but yes,
so I feel like if they're going to still be in the top 4, if they're still going to be in the top 4, then it's. I don't think it's necessary to drop them down to 3 and then move Michigan above them. It doesn't really do anything, especially because they're going to end up playing each other.
It doesn't matter. That's their job. That's the committee's job is to go week by week, right? That's what we said. We're not looking forward to the future. We're not it's week by week. So if we're going week by week, they played a 1-7 Northwestern team. A 1-7. I'm gonna say it again. 1-7 Northwestern team. It was 14-7 with 4 minutes left.
It was a bad game.
And I will say this: Bill Hancock, with the College Football Playoff Committee years ago, told me that the objective of the committee every week is to rebuild the Lego castle from scratch. I always think of that analogy. Like, you're not supposed to say, well, here's where we were last week, and you stack onto it. You're supposed to just completely throw the Legos down, break them apart.
You start from one.
And start from the beginning.
Which is not true.
Right. That's
you can't
exactly
do that.
it. Like, it just smacks it. Like, human nature is human nature. Michigan is in at #3 on this. And, I think if you're a Michigan fan, you're a little angry about this because you played well over the last few weeks. And, Blake Corum is one of the, at this point, because of everything else, he's got to be a Heisman frontrunner. Styles make fights. I still really like Ohio State to beat Michigan when they play head-to-head. But that's the part of it. Like, we'll find out on the field who the better team is.
Which is the other part of it. Like you said, there is resume, there is strength of record, and then there is the eye test. So if the committee thinks that Ohio State is a better team than Michigan by the eye test and they're both undefeated, even if they had a bad game, why would they necessarily drop them below Michigan? Strength
of schedule, strength of record, and game control are all better for Ohio State than they are for Michigan. 3 metrics that the committee factors.
Right, because if it's eye test, they're not. Just because based off of how they've been beating people, Michigan's been beating people, in a much better way than Ohio State has. Ohio State put up a lot of points against Iowa, but for the most part of that game, 3/4 of that game, absolutely struggled. I said it last week. If Iowa had any offense whatsoever, that game's really close. And then 1-7. Again, 1-7 Northwestern. So
this is what every year, though, we learn in the first few weeks at the committee. We learn what this committee values, right? And I think every week's vote gives us a better indication. To your point, I'm not sure this committee is showing us they really value the eye test. And I'm going to continue that conversation because number 4 on this list is TCU. And a lot of people thought last week TCU was disrespected by being as low as they were. They are now the number 4 team in the country. They're 9-0. But I can't say this loud enough. They have trailed in the second half 3 of those 9 games. That doesn't feel like, when you're talking about a team that doesn't necessarily have the best strength of schedule either, that's the sort of dominance I expect from the 4th-ranked team. I get that they moved up because they're undefeated. I'm just not sure that if I had to bet my house, if I had to bet all of our houses together on Tennessee versus TCU or Oregon versus TCU, I don't know that I've seen enough from TCU that makes me feel like I would take them in this matchup. So, like the eye test, I don't know how much that factors into it.
I mean, I think this is the first committee that I feel felt the pressure of everybody being mad that TCU wasn't in the top 6 last week, and they decided to put them in the top 4 because we were looking at, first of all, Tennessee, obviously they took a loss, but Tennessee has better wins than TCU does. So it wouldn't be the first time ever that a team that was number 1 lost a game and then didn't drop out of the top 4. So they could have done that if they were going to, because when you look at the head-to-head, when it goes TCU, Tennessee, it just doesn't make any sense for TCU to be in the top 4 at this point.
I mean, I think they deserve to be. Everybody in the top 4, it looks like they're just playing the, politically correct.
Exactly.
Well, but that doesn't mean they should, right? Like,
right. I understand that. I'm just saying from the committee standpoint, it looks like that's what they're doing. Because everybody.
But I feel like they haven't done that in the past.
But, well, listen, we can't live off the past.
I'm just saying. They haven't done that. So I feel like they don't usually fall to the pressure of what fans, what teams should deserve to be in the top 4. I feel like typically we're always talking about
there, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But typically they don't find the team that deserves to be because of like they're undefeated or are they this or are they that. They usually don't fall for that. They usually go by what they think are and should be the top 4 teams.
TCU's biggest problem is their defense doesn't show up till the second half.
Exactly.
And they haven't really faced a top-notch team that can score with them or stop them from scoring. So for me, but I love TCU. I've been a fan of TCU all season. I think Garrett Riley, Max Duggan's one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch
100%.
This year. Quentin Johnson right there is a freaking baller. There he is again, catching another touchdown. So, listen, they have weapons all over the field. They're fun to watch. I'm excited for them. Do I think they win the Big 12? No. I think it's going to be tough for them. And then if they don't win the Big 12, they're out of it completely, so it doesn't
Who's going to win the Big 12?
I think Texas.
Okay.
Let's get to the 5th team in all the land, and that's Tennessee. They plummet after getting their butts walloped, and everything else by Georgia. They fall to 8-1 in a game that was interesting because it looked like Tennessee was a little tight. Hendon Hooker had a regrettable day, a couple of missed deep balls that could have changed some things early on. Just wasn't a great game by Tennessee, and it was a great game plan by Georgia. I questioned all week whether or not Georgia would get any pressure. Turns out they didn't need to. Their coverage was spectacular, and they got just enough in the face to disrupt Hendon Hooker, and they made Tennessee look silly. You were right.
Yeah, listen, I've been watching Georgia all year. Georgia was the number 1 team in the country, and everybody kept hyping up the fact that they played Missouri close at Missouri. I said it last week. Missouri's a tough place to play for whatever reason. I don't know, but it is. But Georgia came out, and the one thing they've been struggling with all season was getting to the quarterback. They didn't really get to Hendon from a sack standpoint a whole lot, but they had hands in his face. They caused Tennessee to basically have more timing in their passing game and that they haven't had to have, if that makes sense. Because if you look at Trevor Maddich, a co-host on College GameDay Radio with me, did a great breakdown of Jalen Hyatt's 14 touchdown receptions. Over 50% of them, there was nobody within 5 yards of him. So all of a sudden, now Georgia made it to where, all right, we're going to cover. Hendon's going to have to put this football in tight windows. And it didn't work out. The go balls, he threw an interception towards down the right sideline. He didn't get his eyes there quick enough. He threw it thinking that, hey, my receivers have been on top winning all season long. He threw it straight to Georgia's cornerback. So their passing game didn't look the same because dudes weren't running, butt naked.
It it would look different if they were. I mean, I'm not gonna, and that'd probably get you wide open. They're like, hey, that guy.
Don't touch him.
Yeah,
Don't go anywhere near him.
I got nothing after butt naked, but I will tell you about Oregon if you'd like. Christine, Oregon comes in at number 6, 8-1. They rise up. The interesting thing, and you talked about this last week, we continue to see the committee value USC and they value UCLA. That is important because, frankly, these Pac-12 teams will have runway left to get up and get more impressive wins.
Yeah, and I think the most interesting thing about Oregon is the comparison to Tennessee because now they both have losses to Georgia. But when you look at what Tennessee can do for the rest of the season, obviously they are going to most likely win out. They're not going to be able to play in the SEC championship, so they're not going to be a conference champion. Oregon still has a chance to do that. So knowing that Oregon could win out, win the Pac-12, and then have that one loss against Georgia, which we just heard Herbstreit say on their show, the fact that he doesn't care about week 1, and I know, AJ, you feel the same way. You don't care about week 1 because it was week 1. This Oregon team looks completely different than they did week 1 against the defending champs, right? So if you think about Tennessee versus Oregon having a better runway into the CFP, even though they have that common loss, it looks like Oregon has a better opportunity.
A team has never made the college football playoff if they have a blowout loss on the resume, ever in history.
That's very true. That's
never
very true.
with a 20-point or greater loss have we seen a team make the college football playoff.
Right.
Ever.
Who cares?
Well, the committee does because every year they use it as one of the reasons.
They obviously don't. They got them at number 6. They don't care. They're there. They're sitting in prime seat.
So they're gonna get Utah, right?
Right.
Who's ranked, and then they're gonna get the Pac-12 champion.
Yeah, but I'm saying they're sitting in a prime spot because you got Michigan, Ohio State, so one of them's knocked out. So that bumps them up even higher.
Are we sure about that though?
Yes.
Michigan, Ohio State.
If it's a close game, I don't think
Why would that get any less benefit of the doubt?
Because there have been, if it's a good game, and let's just say Michigan or Ohio State wins, so they're at number 2, Michigan loses. So the expectation is that Ohio State is already better than Michigan because they're ranked better than Michigan. It's a close game that has happened before where the committee has seen losses, and maybe Michigan gets bumped to 4, but I don't think that they can necessarily be knocked out. Or if it's the other way, Ohio State at number 2, losing in a close game to Michigan, they could get bumped to number 4.
But you can't, y'all can't fight both sides of it because you were just fighting the fact that Tennessee should be in the top 4.
Hold on.
Number 1.
I'm not fighting anything. I'm not like a fan of these. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, this is what I really think should happen.
What I'm saying
I'm just saying what I think the committee would or could possibly do.
We just saw the committee put Georgia and Alabama in the college football playoff after the SEC championship game, right? And then we got a rematch in the national championship. We just saw that. We've seen it before. There's no reason in my mind, if the committee is telling you that Michigan and Ohio State are 2 and 3, if they play a close game, there's no reason historically that they wouldn't both remain in the top 4.
See, I don't think they will. I think it shows by Tennessee being number 1, having to go to Athens, lose there, and then being dropped outside of the top 4.
Yeah, but they got their butt whooped and they were dropped outside the top 4. If that had been a game like the Tennessee win over Alabama, that could be totally different.
You can still throw out excuses for Tennessee. Oh, they had to play.
No, I'm not throwing out excuses.
It was storming the whole time.
I'm not throwing out excuses. I'm saying not every loss is the same. So if you lose a close game, then the committee doesn't drop you as far. That makes sense.
That's a possibility.
I think Oregon's in.
If it's an overtime game and Michigan wins by 2, you think that they would kick Ohio State out of the top 4?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I think if it's a close game,
I think they would go to 5 at least, and you would see a fight between, and then it would make for a good rankings show the following week between Tennessee and Oregon, who gets that 4th spot.
It will be interesting.
100% believe that.
It would be interesting because neither Michigan nor Ohio State has really played anybody, which the committee has been very angry.
Their out-of-conference scheduling is awful.
I think Michigan is more likely to drop out of the top 4 than Ohio State.
Well, the thing that hurts Michigan is the fact that they canceled their non-conference game versus UCLA before the season started.
Which is also killing UCLA.
It's going to kill UCLA too. So, and I have a fun little take that me and you talked about earlier today that I want to eventually get to.
Wait, what?
Because, and it's going to be a little, being a homer a little bit, but I still
You think
there's a
Alabama
way.
should be in the CFP?
I still think there's a possible way. And our buddy Bud Elliott on Twitter kind of did this breakdown. Well, they did what, 20,000 computer algorithms, simulations basically, and 60% of those 20,000 simulations, Bama still made it in the college football
That's why
playoffs.
We're not in the BCS era.
Yeah, I mean,
it's all an algorithm. Everybody, I don't care if it's called BCS or CFP.
We'll get to Bud later. We're gonna play some Bud that will have everybody fired up, and we're waiting on Boo.
We're gonna do what?
We're gonna play some Bud later. That's Bud Elliott.
Okay.
But in the meantime, let's check in on some of you guys that are commenting.
All right, Maggie, aka Swaggy P, says that she's gonna split screen election results and CFP rankings, which will surely both lead to sane and reasonable reactions by me, no matter of the outcome. That's really funny.
Yep. And I'll just grab some. Just gonna eat.
Okay, so Fred the Third said Horns move up 6 spots to 18 in the CFP rankings, which actually, you know how I am about my Big 12 conspiracy theory. Probably would have been higher if they would have played lights out in the second half. A win's a win is not enough. Style points matter, but I will say that helps TCU, obviously, if they happen to get a win this weekend, right? Like, that's what it plays into my conspiracy theory, basically.
I mean, but you've been right. Like, a lot of times they just want to build everybody up to make sure that
even though they don't look ahead, but they have to be looking ahead because...
Listen,
human nature,
right?
I've been telling y'all that y'all can believe this political crap that the committee throws out. And 1,000% they're looking ahead and they plan all this. It's all a show.
Okay.
I will say, I genuinely, having sat through the mock committee, but also having talked to past committee members, they take this entire process so incredibly seriously. The only thing I can equate it to, I'm never going to have a vote in the College Football Playoff Committee, but I do have a Grammy vote. And as much as people may laugh at that process, I take that seriously every year because you work your whole life to get there. The guys and girls in that committee take the process very seriously. We're going to talk to College Football Playoff Committee Chair now, Boo Corrigan. First time we've gotten to hang out with Boo, and we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. You're hearing some of our conversation. We're trying to figure it all out. I want to ask you about TCU specifically because when I look at the metrics we've looked at in the past, strength of record, strength of schedule, game control, Tennessee and Oregon are both better than TCU in all of those metrics. Why is TCU ahead of them? I think we may have lost Boo. We lost Boo. We'll ask Boo this. It's really the greatest question of my life. We'll ask
that was
Boo.
a really good question.
Yeah, thank you so much. You know, we're gonna effort to reconnect with Boo.
It honestly wasn't good enough. He didn't want it.
Yeah, Boo's like,
He's like,
if you don't give me Cheez-Its, I'm out. We have Boo back. All right, Boo, I think we got you now, my friend. Thank you so much. I mean,
a lot of energy over here. Yes, that's definitely what's happening.
Look, we'll bring you Cheez-Its afterwards, my friend. So I don't know how much you heard.
White cheddar, please.
We have them.
We have them. Let me suggest white cheddar mixed with the toasted. It's a delight. They've really they've crushed it. So I was asking you about TCU because in all the years we've been doing this show, strength of schedule, strength of record, and game control are significant metrics. Tennessee and Oregon are higher in all 3 of those metrics than TCU. So what makes TCU the number 4 team ahead of them?
TCU keeps winning games. And we value the winning of the games. I mean, it's not, there's a lot of ways to look at it and try to think, all right, what about this? And other ways to figure out around it. They find a way to win their games. They're better in the second half defensively than they are in the first half. And as we go through it, and again, I heard you talking earlier, we take great pride in what we're doing. And making sure that we're doing everything we can to get these decisions right. And coming out of this week, and you look at the Tennessee loss, you look at the way Georgia played, you look at the 6 wins over teams that are over 500, and you look at their offense, and you feel pretty good about the decision we made.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about LSU. Not necessarily LSU specifically, but typically we don't see a two-loss team make it into the CFP. We haven't seen it yet. If you look at LSU and just thinking ahead, I know you don't like to do this, but looking ahead and the fact that they could possibly win an SEC championship, what is the likelihood you think this season that a two-loss team could get into the CFP?
We're very excited about Week 10 in the group that we have right now, and we are not going to look ahead. We don't look ahead. It's one of the things that we talk about all the time in the room is make sure that we're going over the body of work of the teams to this point in time, and then when we move on to Week 11, we'll evaluate Week 11.
Boo, my question is, with Ohio State struggling the past couple weeks, struggling against Iowa and then versus a 1-7 Northwestern, what makes them the number 2 team in the country?
When you look at them as a collective, you look at the win over Penn State, you look at the win over Notre Dame, you look at them being top 10 offensive scoring, top 10 defensive scoring, the body of work to this point, the weather last week, you need to take that into account. We're taking everything that we have, all the information we have into account as we make these evaluations. To say that they've struggled, I think, is a bit of a reach. As we're looking at it, we view, as a committee, Ohio State the number 2 team in the country and are very comfortable with that at this point.
Boo, there's 2 things I can tell you. 1, we're going to get you some white cheddar cheeses. That's a given. And number 2, it's your first year and you're already a seasoned pro at this. We really appreciate you hanging out. It's not easy having to defend an entire committee's decisions, and you do it over and over again. Thank you so much for the time, my friend.
Thank you all. Appreciate you.
He's got it down. I mean, it's hard because it's on the one hand, he says, for example, hey, I think it's a reach that they've struggled. To us, I feel like they have. He also says we value wins. But if you value wins, why is the number 7 team in the country a 2-loss LSU team above a USC team that only has 1 loss? Why is Bama at 2 losses ahead of Clemson with 1 loss? So it's just the hardest part about this is it's no one metric. It's all of the metrics, and it's different for every one of the debates.
Right,
yeah.
Because I don't think, listen, I respect Boo and the job that they have to do, but I don't think it's a reach when the number 2 team in the country plays a 1-7 team and it's 14-7 with 3 to 4 minutes left. So, yeah, he can think reaching, but I don't agree.
We're going to show you 7 through 10, and I'm just going to flippantly again remind you Northwestern had a better third down percentage than the number 2 team did in that game. Clemson at number 10. They dropped 6 spots after getting walloped by Notre Dame. Alabama falls down to number 9 at 7-2. They fall 3 spots after their loss in Death Valley. USC moves up 1 as a result, goes to the 8-1 Trojans go to number 8. And at number 7, we just mentioned it, at number 7 here, we have LSU. So LSU coming in at number 7, and it raises, I mean, we knew what Boo was going to say. Look, I'm going to just peel back the fourth wall. We watched the interview that Reese did with Boo Corrigan, the College Football Committee Chair, and then we sit down and we think, what can we ask that they haven't asked? We knew that he was going to say take it week by week, but you also sometimes just have to ask that question because there are very real scenarios that could lead to 2 lost teams being in the college football conversation for the playoff, Christine, and it's like, that's wild.
I do want to talk about TCU a little bit more, just because I just thought about this. The fact that he said that he values wins, right? TCU didn't magically get wins this week. They were already 8-0 before they were 9-0. So I do find it interesting that they were penalized last week because I think he said that they've had a lot of slow starts. Are they proving themselves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you use the Ohio State thing, then it's like, okay, well, look at what Ohio State did. They're still at number 2, right? LSU also did this very similar thing, but they were rewarded for even having slow starts. So it's kind of all over the place, but like you said, it's very hard to defend an entire committee. What were you saying? I was just thinking.
Well, I don't know. Because now you got me thinking.
You make a great point because and I understand how tough his job is, but he's bouncing all over the place when he answers those questions because nothing's matching up. It's like for this team, we'll take this side of the metrics. For this team, we'll use this side of the metrics. It's bouncing all over the place. Nothing is set in stone. So you make a great point with that. And
then look at the other.
But it's hard for him to answer, Boo to answer for everybody on that committee, right? He can't answer that and say, oh, well, it's a reach about the Ohio State thing. Oh, that people aren't looking ahead. Like, if you tell one of us a story, like somebody tells us a secret, by the time it gets to you, something's going to be different, right? So a committee with that many people, like, they're going to have different
There has
opinions.
to be there's different reasons for different teams, I think, being in where they are. And I don't think it necessarily everything applies to every single team. And if it did, then week over week, the same team would have the same treatment.
A very human and I think relatable version of this, I always use the pizza conversation. If you had 13 of your friends walk into a room and have to decide the 20 best pieces of pizza in that room, the debate over what it would be, and then this one you'd be like, well, I like sauce, and this one doesn't have sauce. And you're like, well, why do you not care about the sauce on this one? Well, I don't know. I feel like this pizza's better than this pizza. And like, you can't get 13 grown-ass people to agree on pizza rankings, nonetheless college football rankings. It doesn't mean that they're not taken seriously. I say that to everybody as a reminder of how difficult the job itself is to do. Now, we've shown you 7 through 10, and it raises an interesting question because Alabama, despite a 2-loss team, and we hinted at it earlier, there is a chance that they could make the playoff. If you don't believe me, just listen to Bud.
A crazy scenario in which Alabama, without winning the SEC, still manages to get into the college ball playoff.
But it just might work.
Here's what I think it might take. So Georgia has to win the SEC, they're in. Tennessee with 1 loss is in. Ohio State crushes Michigan and wins the Big Ten. Michigan, which canceled its non-conference game against UCLA and has one of the worst non-con schedules in the country, is out. 3-loss Texas wins the Big 12. Remember, Alabama beat Texas in Austin. And then 2-loss UCLA, which, because Michigan canceled their non-conference game, also has a poor non-conference schedule, wins the Pac-12. Alabama convinces the committee that in this crazy scenario, it's still one of the 4 best teams in the country. Likely? No. Possible? Yeah.
The weird thing is that I don't want to say anything's not likely in this. I mean,
what happened with Tennessee in that scenario?
Nothing. Tennessee wins out, and they're in.
Okay.
I'm telling you, that's crazy.
He put 3 teams.
Okay,
he
got
put
it.
3 SEC teams
That's
in
what would
with
have to
Ohio
happen.
State.
That's what would have to happen.
Well,
which is kind of what we.
No,
but
that's not the only scenario. If LSU slips up versus Arkansas this weekend, that's another scenario. And Bama wins out. Bama wins the SEC. Bama's in as a 2-loss team and the SEC champion.
Hold on. When did he make
and that knocks just
it went up today.
Yeah,
okay, so he has Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee. Then what happens with LSU? They would, if they lose in the SEC championship, because Georgia
out.
would win.
Got
it.
Yeah,
Got it. Okay. That makes sense.
So that is because he mentions one of the scenarios, and the other scenario is if LSU slips up one of these remaining 3 weeks.
If they lose they're not in the SEC.
And Bama plays in the SEC championship. Bama beats Georgia. Well, then Georgia would be in. Tennessee would be out. Alabama would be in. And then you would have Ohio State.
Why would Tennessee be out?
I don't think they would put Tennessee out.
No, I'm just saying Tennessee would probably be the one that out of all those 3, Bama, LSU, and Tennessee would have the hardest chance of getting in.
But Tennessee has a head-to-head win over Alabama.
But it doesn't
And Tennessee
matter,
doesn't have to do anything else. They're going to win all the remaining of their games.
The head-to-head win over Alabama at that point. This is the wild part of it.
It could. I'm just saying that they could just say, hey, we'll take a 1-loss Georgia if they wanted to keep where it was only 2 SEC teams. They would say, we're going to take the SEC champ. Sorry, Tennessee, you didn't win. You didn't even win the East. We're going to take Georgia because they won the East. Their only losses in the SEC championship. We're not going to punish them this late in the season. And then they would figure out, hey, does that make Oregon or somebody else? I mean, but then you got UCLA that.
But then Oregon didn't win the Pac-12 based on
on
what
that
Bud
scenario.
said.
No, I know, but I said there's 2 scenarios.
Oh.
Right. So we've never done this before on the show, but, for all the time we spend yelling at the committee, we figured why not yell at each other and give you our rankings. So it's time for the Rankings Reaction Committee. There's 3 of us. We have to come to a consensus. We're going to give you our top 6 according to us. And here's the one rule I would give us, guys. I don't really give a damn what the committee did. I think we can do whatever we want here. So we all agree, right? Number 1 is Georgia, right?
Yeah.
No dispute to that. I would put Michigan at number 2 over Ohio State right now.
Okay.
Christine, are you good with that? Or?
I'm fine with that only because
Here's the crazy thing. I think Ohio State is going to embarrass Michigan in a couple of weeks. I just think
right now.
This week. Oh,
Iowa,
okay, so after
Penn State, it was a close game.
I was like, what are we doing?
Michigan blew Penn State out, and then a 1-7 Northwestern. Ohio State struggled in 3 games. Michigan hasn't done that yet. As much as their
fine.
strength of
Put them at
schedule
number
and
2.
all that.
Oh, we talked her into it. We talked her into it. No, she's giving us that look like,
Whatever.
I'm out on this. And by the way, I would love to have cameras in the committee to see if there's just a point where you look over the one guy and you're like,
And then like rolling their eyes and they're like, I'm over you.
We know that this matchup's going to take care of itself. So you're like, you know what, buddy? I'm going to go have a donut while you yell about it. Fine. So we've got, in this scenario, if we have Michigan number 2, then that means we're all agreeing that Ohio State's number 3?
That would be number 3, yeah.
We're all good with that, right? AJ? AJ, you want to convince us otherwise?
Ohio State
you're
3?
good with Ohio State at 3?
I would make a case for TCU to be 3.
Oh my God, no.
What?
No,
TCU
we're not.
to be-
Nobody agrees with that.
If you had,
Yeah,
Please.
I'm not saying that it's R. I'm fine with Ohio State being at 3. I would just say I would make a case for TCU to be 3.
You would make a case? You want to make a case?
No, I mean I'm fine with Ohio State, but I wouldn't mind seeing TCU at 3.
okay, Ohio State. If I there's simplification. You call it the eye test. For me, I always call it the bet my house test. In this,
All
situation,
right, so who would win between? Can you for sure say? Now listen, you lost $300-something this past weekend because you
way
didn't
more
listen
than
to
that.
me.
I mean,
Okay?
I was up, y'all. Like I was up. I was riding. I was like, oh, I got it.
But
Saturday.
But because you didn't listen to me, so you're gonna listen to me now. I'm gonna try to help you out.
If you have to,
I'm saying
We're not
you
betting any money.
You wouldn't bet your house right now that Ohio State would beat TCU.
yeah, I would. I'd bet Ohio State.
All right. Well, then listen. We need to put you in a clinic. You gotta get
you wouldn't bet. You wouldn't bet.
No, I would not. Not
If
at
you
all.
had to place the bet on the game, you would bet TCU.
You think?
I don't know.
Okay,
I'm
no.
not
This is a
saying
better way to.
100%.
This is a
I'm
better
just
way to ask
saying-
the question.
I'm saying I'm not 100% guaranteed that
Well, none of us
Ohio
are. I mean,
State.
no.
Do you think that TCU is the 3rd best team in the country? No, you do not think that.
I mean, no, but I'm talking about just off of their record and how their offense is playing. The thing that worries me about them is their defense. They show up in the second half, but it takes them a half to show up. But hell, Ohio State's offense hasn't shown up in the first half of the last couple of weeks. So,
But you literally,
That could be
before the
one hell
show
of a
started,
matchup.
said that TCU isn't even going to win the Big 12.
correct. We're talking about right now.
I'm saying, but if you don't think that this TCU team
We're
right
talking
now,
about right now.
hold on, no,
Like
right
we
now,
just said,
no,
we got
listen,
pizza.
listen
We
to
got
what I'm saying.
pizza.
Listen to what I'm no, listen. I'm not looking forward to the future, but if you don't think that this current TCU team can even win the Big 12, then how do you think they're the 3rd best team in the country?
I don't think they have anybody that
I'm
can
not
stop
looking.
Marvin Harrison.
I'm not looking ahead to the future. I'm just saying if you don't think that this current
Right.
TCU team
We're
can
not
win the Big
voting off
12
of that,
conference,
though.
I
We're
asked
not voting
you,
off
do
that.
you think that TCU is the 3rd best team in the country, and you don't think the 3rd best team in the country can win the Big 12 conference?
No,
I look at it this way.
that doesn't mean you still have to play, Christine. Like, I've been a part of teams I've talked about in the past. The 2010 Alabama team was the most talented team I've ever been a part of. And we lost 3 games that year. And we were the best team, I thought, in the country. By far. So, yes, you still have to play the game.
Well, of course you still have to play the game, but like as we rank things, if I had to for me, it's as simple as every advanced metric we're supposed to study has Ohio State better, and if I had to bet my house, if I had to bet your kids on which the outcome of this game, I bet
that ain't gonna happen.
I'm going Ohio. Like if everything's on the line, if I have to bring in my precious, amazing dog turd Annabelle, and I'm like, Annabelle, you do not get to stay here anymore unless I get this game right. I am betting her on Ohio State over TCU if I have to. I'm not betting TCU over Ohio State if I have to. Also, Annabelle,
Listen,
I love you, and I'm sorry I tried to.
All I was saying was I was
Daddy's
just
got a problem.
I had no problem putting Ohio State there, but I was saying to make a case for TCU,
So
we all can't agree on everything.
No. So if we go Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State is how because we have an uneven number. At number 4, are you going TCU at 4?
Here's the thing. I'm going to say yes, because that's what I put in my original rankings when I first was ranking this week. But I do think that there is a case we're making cases for Tennessee to be at number 4 because they have better wins than TCU. They have wins over LSU. They have win over Alabama. TCU has wins over not those teams. So I think that there is a case for Tennessee, even though they look like actual garbage against Georgia. I think there's a case for Tennessee to be at number 4, even after the loss against Georgia, because it's Georgia, who's now number 1, and they have better wins than TCU does.
This is a TCU team that's trailed 3 times in the second half. They beat Kansas by 7. They beat Oklahoma State by 3. They beat Kansas State by 10. They're a good team. They're a good team. I don't think they're a great team. I think right now, I can't believe I'm saying this, but if the game were in Oregon, like, I think Bo Nix could beat this TCU team. Like, I think an argument could be made right now for Oregon, as well as Oregon is playing today.
Yeah, but you said at Oregon.
Yeah, well, I know, because we all know that Oregon, like on a neutral field, Bo Nix is, woo!
He's not great.
But right now, if I had to, I think Oregon could beat TCU. I think Oregon is not getting enough love in this process.
Right, but you could say the same for TCU. If they were to play Oregon at TCU, I would bet TCU to win. I'm just taking your idea.
As well as Bo Nix is playing right now on a neutral field, I think I would take Oregon. Personally, I would take Oregon at number 4.
What do you mean on a neutral field? This past week was the first time he hasn't.
Yeah, that's one. That's one.
Right, but TCU
you would take Oregon
also,
over Tennessee? Because they have the same L.
No.
Yeah,
there's no way.
That one's tough for me.
No way.
Personally, I would still have TCU at 6, and I would go either Oregon or Tennessee at 4 and 5. That's what I would do. But we're a committee, so
So what do we? So who do we have at 5?
We need to figure out the 4th. Who's the 4th?
Oh, I thought we did TCU 4.
Are we doing TCU 4?
Oh, okay, that's what we were on. No, we were on that. So who do we have at number 4? Because I think
I would put Oregon or Tennessee at 4.
I was gonna say I think Oregon or Tennessee should be at number 4.
You just said TCU.
I didn't say TCU. I just told you that Tennessee has better. I said Tennessee has better.
TCU should be at number 4. That's what you said
that
originally. Yes.
No, I said
yes, you did, Kristen.
Oh my God, Shelby. If you're listening to this, I just told you.
I'm good with TCU at 4.
I said will make a case for Tennessee at number 4 because they have better wins than TCU, LSU, and Alabama.
You said all that after. You said TCU.
Wait. They're getting in my ear saying 100%. You did say TCU.
Like, in my living in the Matrix where nobody listens to anything. I don't understand.
Said, no, this is what I said. I said, I can understand why TCU was at number 4. I had TCU in my original rankings, but I said, I can make a case for Tennessee at number 4.
You almost said, quote, unquote, you said, I'll go with TCU at number 4 because I had TCU at number 4 in my rankings. And then I said, but I can make a case for Tennessee over TCU.
Look, this is 3 of us. Now imagine there being 13 of us.
I just want to tell everybody, why was I talking about Tennessee having wins over LSU and Alabama if I didn't say that they should be number 4?
Listening. They're even
AJ, you're taking TCU number 4?
Yes.
And are you taking TCU?
No!
Okay. I personally, I would put either Tennessee or Oregon at 4. I have no problem whichever one you want. I think it's a toss-up between those two. I don't think TCU.
I'm about to rewind this because why were we even talking about this if it wasn't for me bringing up Tennessee?
You know what? Here's the thing I know. We tried to give you a top 6, and I've already decided that I'd rather eat Cheez-Its. There's no way we're going to get a top 6, so we'll just we'll let you hear this instead.
Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. That was our theme. We told them we wanted to play them right here in our box.
Dominant performance here for the Dogs. And the march to Atlanta and beyond continues for this Georgia Bulldog team.
You get what you earn. We earned this tonight.
The number 4 team in the country. They come to South Bend and lose to an unranked Notre Dame team.
Dominated. I wish I could say I saw it coming. Nights like this, you want to forget.
LSU, Alabama. There is a passion and a wildness to these matchups. And that is patented Bryce Young magic. Then Alabama with the field goal to force overtime. Bama's got to get a stop or their playoff hopes are over. Caught! It's gone! LSU does it!
To come here and restore the pride and tradition of this program just means so much.
All right, on Saturdays, we award one lucky fan on site at Countdown to Game Day with the illustrious Cheesiest Chain. This past weekend, Christine was down in Athens.
Yeah.
Chain was awarded to Caden. Check this out, a.k.a. Buddy the Elf, and look, is the ultimate Christmas person. I love all of this. And you smell like beef and cheese. You stink. This is all good. You sit on a throne of lies. We found that out later on. Fan of that, Christine?
I freaking love it. Elf used to be one of my favorite movies.
Used to be?
I haven't watched it in a long time. I have to watch it again for it to remind me how much I love it.
Oh, man.
But it's a really good movie. So.
I don't know how I feel.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about this. The Christmas movies are already on for me. But here on Rankings Reaction, we're also honored to have the chain with us. So let's see who's feeling the cheesiest week. The winner of this week's Cheesiest Chain presented by Cheez-It. Now, we put up the contest where we're going to pick games, and
Whatever.
I can't even imagine. Okay, look, he only got 2 games right, but that's 2 games more than Christina and I got us. I'm just getting up. Look, I'm going to put this on you. We're going to give you like pomp and circumstance. Don't look at my rear end. There we go. I'm coming behind you.
Nobody's looking at your rear
I'm the champion.
It's literally one time.
My friend.
I don't think you can sing that. We can't afford the licensing on it. All right, let's stay generic with it. AJ, this feels good. I feel like that's a good look on you, buddy.
Congratulations.
I know you're feeling the cheesiest look. Like I said, AJ's got a whopping 2 points out of this. We all have
how
none.
many points y'all got?
Are we? But
how many points y'all got?
Doesn't it change every week?
Yeah, every week's a new contest. Every week's a new competition.
How many points y'all got?
Well, I mean, every week's a new competition.
You
Say it. 0.
Oh, man.
0.
Oh my gosh, you have 1 win.
I have been hearing it about Georgia, Tennessee for days at this point. It's going to be my nightmare.
So.
It's been some Saturday, Christine. All right, let's get to this week's picks. Again, it's a fresh week. It's a new week. We're starting all over. We'll get some games here. We'll run it back. We'll see how we can do with Week 11. Let's start with North Carolina taking on Wake Forest. That's number 17, North Carolina. Number 21, Wake Forest. Who you got?
I have Wake Forest, but I almost accidentally said UNC. I'm very glad I corrected myself on that.
If that doesn't work, that's where it's going to go. Also, yeah, you've got the same. You got Wake Forest?
I got Wake Forest only because it's there, right?
Yeah, I just, as long as Wake Forest doesn't do one of those turn the ball over 87 times in one quarter thing, I think it'll be fair. We all agree on that one. The next one, TCU, Texas. Big for the playoff, obviously. TCU, a lot of eyes on that. Christine, who you got? TCU,
I have
Texas.
TCU in that one. I want TCU to win this one. Obviously, it is on the road. I will be there. But I believe in Sunny Dice.
That is amazing.
And this TCU team. But I will say, what were you going to say?
No, I just realized you're going to be in Texas.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I have TCU.
Have you figured out the Cowboy? Like, if you haven't seen Christine on Saturdays, it's cowboy hats, cowboy boots when you're in Texas, and it was fire last time.
Yeah. So I got a cowboy hat custom made. So thank you.
Who do you have in this one, by the way? I'm with AJ. We're both taking Texas. I think Texas is playing sneaky good. So also I like chaos. UCF taking on Tulane. Who you got in this one?
I have Tulane for this one.
Okay, yeah. AJ, you got Tulane too?
Yes, sir.
Oh my goodness, we
not
can't
far
on
from
everything.
the house in Mobile.
Now we finally got in a disagreement. I'm taking UCF just because they were fake national champions a few years ago. Really, no other good reason. Alabama versus Ole Miss. I think we all agree that Roll Tide.
Alabama, yeah.
Roll Tide here.
Yeah, bounce back week, baby.
Okay.
Gotta have it.
No faith in Lane.
I love Lane, but
I know that, but I mean,
Bama hasn't lost 2 in a row in a long time.
All right, let's go to the next game. Purdue, Illinois. Illinois coming off of the massive embarrassment against Michigan State. Who you got?
Illinois bounce back.
Yeah, I feel like this one's not because Illinois is that great, but because Purdue is Purdue. All right, Florida State, Syracuse. In this one,
I will never choose Florida State to do anything. So it's a Syracuse win for me.
AJ, yeah, I'm with AJ.
Also, last week I was at one of my best friends' house. She went to Florida State, and I went to Miami, obviously. So I had to sit there and watch that game with her. It was miserable.
No, that does sound.
Yeah,
miserable.
it was awful.
The thing for me is about Syracuse. Ever since they melted down against Notre Dame,
it's like
they're just deflated. They're not themselves anymore. So we have to have a tiebreaker in this one, as we do every week, because we might end up with the same. So the tiebreaker is going to be the total points scored in Alabama versus Ole Miss. What you got?
90 points.
90 points. Okay, I like that.
72.
I wanted to put 12,354 just to screw with everybody, but I went 93. I just, none of us know.
I think it's going to be a low-scoring game.
Can we actually,
we
should make this like the Price is Right, where you can't go over, but you have to have the closest point number? I don't know. I'm throwing things out.
How does it work?
Yeah, the prices. Have you never seen the
I
prices?
have, but I haven't watched that show in.
So if everybody
forever.
else is over and you bet $1, you win.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
AJ's in on the strategy. That's why he gets the Cheesiest Chain. All right, let's pull up the recap of the picks for you here. You can see what they all look like. A lot of agreement. A lot.
Oh my goodness!
Agreement.
I would just like everybody to know. I did originally say UNC, but we are back with the Wake Forest situation. Okay?
I'm just suddenly my hopes against AJ Wright on UCF, and I feel not great about that. All right, there's your 21 through 25. Illinois, UCF, Florida State, Kentucky, Washington. Kentucky coming back up from the non-ranks. As you see, 16 through 20. Big rise for NC State, doing it all with their backup quarterback. Also a big rise for Texas coming up to number 18. Both of them rise 6. As we go 11 through 15, North Carolina, Penn State, Utah, UCLA, Ole Miss. Important to keep an eye on UCLA and Utah, as that matters a lot for the Pac-12 and the eventual Pac-12 championship. Now, that gets you sort of caught up on 11 through 25 and all of the info we get there. In the meantime, what did you have?
No, I just find it very interesting. I wonder how I didn't get a chance to count, and I don't have it in front of me, but like how many ACC teams are still in the top 25 because Florida State being not ranked and getting a win over Miami.
We should have Drew back.
No, Harry's going to be here in 5 seconds, but I do find it interesting because I like to have conspiracy theories, and I also like to look. I know the committee doesn't do this, but look ahead and see what wins other teams that are not set up are going to be able to get in order to set themselves up that are going to be ranked wins, and I find it interesting.
All right, I will try and look up any of the information on the conferences. But in the meantime, speaking of the ACC, let's bring in our buddy Harry Douglas. Harry joining us right now. Harry, what surprised you the most out of these rankings so far?
I think the thing that stands out to me right now is number 7, LSU. And the reason why I point out LSU is that I do believe they control their own destiny. Now, if they continue to win and win out in convincing fashion as well and win the SEC championship against number 1 overall Georgia, I do not see how a committee could leave an SEC champion out of the college football playoffs. You got to look at their schedule and what they've been able to do the last few weeks. And beating up Florida, beating 2 top 10 teams in Alabama and Ole Miss, and then you have another opportunity to get it again against number 1 Georgia in the SEC championship game if they make it that far. I also think that if LSU can go ahead and win out, I think Georgia would still get in, and then you would have Tennessee on the outside looking in. Granted, I do know Tennessee beat LSU convincingly this year, but if LSU is the SEC champion, I think that can cause a lot of chaos around college football for a lot of other conferences.
Oh, what?
I was just I figured you were going to talk to Harry about something now.
Oh, no, I thought we were each going to do our big thing.
Oh,
are we not?
I'm in agreement with that with Harry, only because I tell you that what would make it really interesting is I don't know if Tennessee's out in that time. Only because Tennessee could make the argument as, hey, we beat the brakes off of the SEC champion. And yes, they won the SEC championship, but we had bad luck by being stuck in the East and having to face Georgia. So, I mean, you can make an argument for 3 SEC teams, even in that scenario, the same way that we had talked about, earlier in the show about if LSU slips up, Alabama wins out, and Alabama wins the SEC championship. Like, you make a case again that 3 SEC schools could be in the Final Four.
Man, as somebody that loves chaos, I'm going to be honest, y'all. Like, I love chaos so much. The thought of 3 college football playoff teams from the SEC sort of makes me happy, but I'd have to get off Twitter for like a month because everybody would be wildly convinced that there's this huge bias. Like, it's amazing how...
Well, everybody already thinks that to begin with.
Fitz, I'll tell y'all this, though. I don't understand why people say that, though. If the SEC is the best conference, and we're talking about we want the 4 best teams in the playoffs, and if 3 of the 4 best teams come out of the SEC, I want to see the 3 of the 4 best teams in there. I don't want to see these lopsided college football semifinals games that we've been seeing over the years. I just don't want to see that. So if 3 of the 4 of the best teams in college football reside in the SEC, then I think those 3 teams need to get into the playoffs.
Well,
I agree with that.
All I can say to Harry is, in about 2 years when they expand it, just close your eyes for the first 4 games because there's going to be some. There's going to be some absolute blowouts in the first and second round.
You're not wrong. And for me, when we started talking about expansion, the first thing I thought was I love expansion. Just make it. If you're going to make it 12 teams, make them the 12 best. I don't care if they come from one conference. I don't care if they come from 5.
It shouldn't be. You shouldn't get people that are guaranteed if they win conferences and stuff like that.
I don't want to watch
records
a 3-loss
stuff like that.
I don't want to watch the 3-loss conference champion come in.
Right.
All right, AJ, what's your big thing from all of this?
Yeah. So the big thing for me is the fact that Ohio State's still at number 2. Listen, I think Ohio State's one of the best 4 teams in the country. I just don't believe they belong at number 2. Their best win is against Penn State. They still didn't beat Penn State as bad as Michigan did. Then they turned around. They struggled against Iowa for 3/4 of that game. If Iowa had any offense at all, that game's a lot closer. And then a 1-7 Northwestern team. I don't care what the weather is. I've played in absolute awful weather. Harry's played in awful weather. Harry, does it matter if a quarterback throws you the ball and there's 15-mile-per-hour winds and the ball goes off track 3 yards? It's your job to go get the ball, right?
I'm with you, AJ, in those regards, because when you look at Ohio State and you look at how much better Ohio State is than Northwestern, they have a great run game as well with Travion Henderson and Maya Williams. Those guys could have picked up the slack and routed Northwestern, but it wasn't like that. It was a 21-7 victory. So when I'm looking at that, and then I'm looking at how they played against Penn State, those are the 2 games that are close together where I just don't think we've seen the best of Ohio State.
Yeah, that's my big thing with them is they played to their competition, and when they've played their best competition versus Penn State, it still wasn't as great as Michigan. So I think Michigan should be at the number 2 spot, and Ohio State should be 3 or 4.
This plays nicely into your one big thing, I think.
My big thing is that everything is TBD. The only thing that we know week 2 of the rankings is the fact that Georgia will most likely be in the CFP, because even if they win or lose the SEC championship, they'll have 1 loss in the SEC championship. Okay, great. So that's literally the only thing that we know for certain, because as we know, Michigan and Ohio State will play each other. TCU still has to win all of their games, because I doubt that they're not going to have, or they're going to have TCU in there with 1 loss, even if it is the Big 12 championship. So literally the only thing that we know as of right now, based on how everything has been shaking out so far in the college football season, is that Georgia will most likely be in the CFP. Everything else is TBD.
Well, and when you say that, Christina, it actually brings me to my one big thing, which is this is a safe committee. I think what the committee's telling you right now is because everything's TBD and it's all sort of laid out there in front of them, it's like, all right, well, it'll work itself out. So why not put TCU at 4, knowing full well that you'll be able to justify dropping TCU if strength of schedule continues to rise for Oregon. You'll be able to justify dropping Michigan or Ohio State out of this. They'll be able to justify whatever moves they make based on the games that are left to play. I didn't get the sense that we necessarily got the perfect ranking for this week. I think we got the safest ranking that they can weasel out of in the future in this playoff. No disrespect meant to the men and women on that committee. I think they do a great job. It's not an easy job, but I think it was a very safe job.
And to your point, and to Harry's point, playing this safe route by the committee opens up the door for a 2-loss SEC team to be in the Final Four. I promise you this, because it's the reason they're playing it safe, because everybody's got to play everybody. USC is going to be out of it possibly. Oregon could be knocked out of it. All right, TCU could be knocked out of it. So that takes LSU and Bama, depending on if LSU wins out, then they're in. If LSU slips up, Bama gets in. So, it's opening up the door for either 3 SEC teams or a 2-loss SEC team to be in there.
All right, so that brings us to the way we always end this show, and that's with Christine. This week you get to do it. It's time for the way more important rankings, where we rank things that have nothing to do with the actual rankings today.
Okay, but this kind of actually has to do with college football, because usually it's random, and last week I don't remember even what you did. I didn't agree with it.
You did favorite 6 fall things.
Yeah, favorite fall things. Okay, so HD, you're going to want to get on this, because I'm ranking the top college game day locations, but only from this season.
Oh.
So it's so far, obviously. Okay, so let's start at number 6. I said Ohio State only because I honestly don't remember going anywhere else. We're going to Texas twice, Tennessee twice, Ohio State, I don't even know where else we went. But anyways, Ohio State is number 6. They're a great, it's a great location. It was week 1, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. At number 5, I have Texas. Because I also love that there's the ranking things, because I'm like, wait, they dropped 4?
Yeah, I did the same thing. I was like, where did that come from?
Okay, Texas was fun this week. I think me and HD really played into the whole Texas theme with our cowboy boots and cowboy hats on. So it was a great time. Tennessee at number 4. Here's why.
Respect.
Not only necessarily because of the game day site, but because of the fact that it was a win over Alabama that week. The win over Alabama and the fans storming the field. It was like one of my top 5 college football moments ever. So that's why Tennessee's there. Kansas was great because nobody had ever been there before and nobody knew that Kansas even had football there. App State was fun. I got to tour downtown. That was a lot of fun. And Jackson State at number 1 because the HBCU energy is unmatched. They welcomed us with open arms. We felt like family. It was a beautiful time.
Harry, you agree with these?
Yeah. Yeah, Jackson State is my number 1. App State is my number 2. My number 3, though, Christine, would be Tennessee. I just think that energy at Neyland Stadium and the way those fans showed up and showed out, beating Alabama, and you just mentioned they stormed the field, had the cigars, a guy picking me up like I'm not a grown man.
Everybody had cigars.
And I almost got into
where
it with
these cigars
him.
come from?
It was a fun time.
Yeah.
It was a fun time. And then Kansas, like you mentioned, Kansas was another place that we have not been to in regards of college game day, and the fans definitely showed up and showed out. But Jackson State being number 1 for me, I think that was huge.
We're here.
HBCU, the teams, Southern and Jackson State, the fans showed up for both teams in those regards. So I think it should be a yearly thing that game day does. Just pick one of these classic games to go to when it comes to HBCU, because I think it was very memorable.
It was fun. It was a great time.
You can watch Harry Douglas and Christine Williamson along with Harry Lyles every Saturday morning from 8:30 to 9 a.m. Eastern right here for Countdown to Game Day. You can hang out with AJ McCarron and I for the college football show right here in beautiful Bristol from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturday nights. Bristol, obviously the hypest of all of the hype. In the meantime, it takes a whole village to make this show happen. Matt, Shelby, Joey G, Courtney, Damian, Julius, we appreciate all of you. He's AJ McCarron. She's Christine Williamson. He's Harry Douglas. I'm Jason Fitz. Thank you for watching Rankings Reaction presented by Cheez-It. Gonna make it this week. No, I'm not. Every week.